Hello, manic.mercurian here, and this will be a bit of a different video. I wanted to do kind of a channel update and just talk to you as, just as me and tell you a bit about what's going on with the channel, and I'll answer some of your questions, some questions I've gotten, and some questions I just tend to get kind of often. So I figured I would just go over all of that good stuff and more. So this is going to be kind of all over the place. Let's get into it. So, I did want to say the first thing. So the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I've just completed all 144 Sun Moon combinations. I know that series was pretty popular, so people tend to like those, and they were fun to make. It did take me almost 3 years. Yes, because I started the first one I did, Aries Sun Taurus Moon, I did in December of 2020. So now it is September 2023. Took me 2.75 years, I guess, to do that series. So I'm very excited to be done with that and to move on. I guess one obvious question would be, where are we going from here? And I'm definitely going to continue doing the week forecasts. I've done those almost every week for the last 2 years, I believe. I did have a 2-month hiatus this year. I just took some time to get away from it and just to kind of, think about everything, which I am glad I did that, because then, I did make a lot of changes to how I do the forecast. I improved the audio quality and then the video quality as well. I didn't do them on video before, so that has been a change as well. But anyway, so yeah, doing the week forecast. There are actually a lot of other series that I haven't gotten to they remain uncompleted right now. So and honestly, I don't think I could even name them all. Some of them I haven't worked on in some time. So I'm gonna dig some of those up and finish those. I know those would include the compatibility series, which honestly doesn't get as many views, but some people do, really find value in those. So I would like to finish those. Just assessing the compatibility of each sign with the 12 signs, how each of those dynamics looks. And then I'll also talk about the Venus placements. I've done a few of those. Those are semi-popular. And then I believe, there's some other ones as well. Ranking the 12 signs is pretty fun. I've ranked the signs in many different ways, but I'm sure I could think of more. So yeah, there's a lot more series to do. Continuing the week forecast, and then I'm also doing the you probably noticed the trivia, the quizzes, and things like that. Those types of non-video format posts, I guess you could say. So those, I was doing those one every day that would post at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm still planning on posting those consistently and frequently. However, I think I'm just going to do one every 2 days. I think that's good enough. But I have become a bit more familiar with, it used to just be polls, just asking you, how you what your favorite of each sign would be for different circumstances. I still do a lot of those, but then now I'm also adding in a lot of trivia as well. So those are a lot of fun. They're very easy for me to make and kind of fun for me to make. And then, it's very fun to see what everyone's answers are. A lot of time they surprise me, but oftentimes I agree with the consensus as well. So those are a lot of fun. And I think, for whatever reason, YouTube broadcasts those out more so than the videos, so it brings me exposure, and again, it's just a lot of fun for everyone. So I'm going to continue those as well. And honestly, I think that pretty much sums it up. And then plus the chart readings. And here these are some questions for me. One suggestion was to, we'll get there in a second, but it was to read charts of celebrities. I think that's a really great idea. It would be fun and interesting. Celebrities' charts are, it's a huge way of learning astrology, because these are people that we all, we may not know them personally or intimately, but we all at least have an idea of them. We may have some, vision of their personality, and we can also see major events in their lives. So that's a great way to learn astrology. I don't know why I didn't think of that, honestly. I think that's an awesome idea. But so that's another series, I guess you could say, that I would be interested in starting. I also want to say, since I am focusing on building the channel, that's also a great way to build the channel, because if you there should be a word for this, but if you it's the reason why collaborations do so well. I don't know if any of you are YouTubers or if you are tuned into this type of thing, but if you get some kind of searched name in your title, in your description of your videos, things like that. So if I'm putting Brad Pitt's chart or Jennifer Aniston's chart, but specifically whoever's topical at the moment, if I'm reading their chart, and that could bring a lot of could direct a lot of searches my way, so it could help grow the channel as well. So a lot of things we can do for the future. I'm kind of all over the place already, but that's okay. I did want to mention, so going back to my reasons for doing this video, for one, I just haven't done a video like this in a long time. I used to do them much more frequently when the channel was much smaller. It was only a couple of years ago that I had less than 100 subscribers, and I was still learning a lot. I still am learning a lot. But I used to do these type of kind of off the cuff videos, so it was great to do that. And speaking about the channel growing, I am nearing 3,000, I think I'm almost at 2,800 right now, and at this rate, I should definitely pass 3,000 before the end of the year. So this channel is growing. Like I said, it was less than 100 only, I believe 2 years ago. So my intentions are to continue growing the channel. Of course, doing so, I want to do so through the same lens. So if you read the little description, the little bio on my YouTube, it is to share what I've learned and share what I continue to learn along the way. That is the main intention of the channel. That's what it's always been, and that's what it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. So that's the overall intention. And I wanted to just restate that, because I do think that we can become lost, as we get bigger. I'm not saying I'm a huge, I'm still very small. I still have a very small YouTube channel. So I'm not trying to say that I have, that I've got this like runaway success or anything like that. But still, I do think it's important to check in from time to time and reevaluate our intentions. How have they stayed the same? How have they changed? Again, for this channel, largely they have stayed the same, but I still want to state that publicly, that it's about learning. It's academic, it's intellectual, you guys know that. But it's fun as well. We do have fun from time to time. I like to have a bit of humor in the comments, things like that. So, okay, so sorry, that was a bit all over the place, but at this point, I'm just going to go through some questions. I wrote down some questions that I've been asked personally, some on YouTube, some in person, some both. But I wrote down some questions that I thought might be interesting to answer, or that I get asked a lot. And then also we've got this comment thread here as well. So we're just going to go through all of these, and it could be fun. Some of these you'll find are suggestions more so to like on future content that I could make. So a lot of these are deserving of their own video or their own series of videos. So some of these I'll answer, and then, let's just get to it. So let's see. There was one. Okay, I'm already getting right. So this one, yes, this is the one I meant to answer first, even though it's kind of halfway in the middle. You said perhaps you can introduce yourself. What brought you to your interest in astrology, and what you see about the part that astrology will play into the future of the souls that are incarnated on Earth. So I'm manic.mercurian. Obviously, that's not my real name. A lot of you know my name. I'd prefer not to put that out there. I don't know why. I just don't really want to do that. But yeah. So I didn't grow up with astrology at all. I've been asked that before, but that's not how it works for me. For me, as a young person, astrology was just something I never really thought about. If you asked me if I believed in it, I would say definitely not, and right before my 18th birthday, coincidentally, I guess, doesn't really have to do with that, but actually, let me back up and preface this by saying I've always had the personality of getting kind of deep into various subjects and rabbit holes. Like as a child, I was one of those kids that knew everything about animals. I loved, learning all the facts about animals, and then it was dinosaurs. So I was kind of a nerdy kid, but yeah, I loved learning in general and loved figuring things out. Loved, whatever it was, there was usually some kind of subject that was on my mind at the time that I would really, really just become obsessed with. And, it would just create this cycle where I just couldn't get enough of it. And eventually I would kind of exhaust those. I'm not saying I know everything there is to know about animals or dinosaurs, but I would get to a point where finally my curiosity was somewhat satisfied. So then, I might just be a bit complacent for a while until I found the next thing and then sunk my teeth into that and become obsessed with that. So over the years, I've actually done that with many different subjects. I'm not even going to talk about all of that because it does get really obscure. And part of what I love about this channel and this, astrology as well, is that it is not controversial. I guess you could say it's controversial in the sense that many people think it's bullshit, right? However, things have become so controversial in recent times, politically and things like that. And astrology, I think, it's kind of outside all of that. It doesn't trigger people. It's not going to upset anyone. It's not vulgar or triggering in any kind of way. So anyways, some of these subjects I've gotten into are a bit more polarizing, and I don't just mean politically. I just mean we just don't need to get into that. But so I've always had that type of personality, right? And the summer after high school, one of the subjects I became obsessed with was mythology, world mythology, and how come these different cultures that had nothing to do with each other, they have the same stories. Like everyone talks about dragons, everyone talks about the Great Flood. If these cultures had nothing to do with each other, didn't know of each other's existence, why are there these same themes in the mythology? That intrigued me a lot, and to me it wasn't enough to just say, oh, they just made it up. It's stories that they made up. If it's just stories they made up, why did they make up the same exact stories? Is there something in our psychology that's driving that, or could the stories actually be real on some level? I don't know. So that was, kind of a precursor. That happened only a few months. I became kind of obsessed with world mythology and the connections between various mythologies. Pretty much immediately after that, for whatever reason, I thought I would take a look at astrology. That is something I've done as well over the years, is even though, there may be an idea or a subject which I don't have interest in the sense that I don't have any stock in it. I don't view it as accurate. It seems silly to me or far-fetched, but I'll take a look at it anyway. I want to see the reason for it. It's not enough for me to just say, astrology or even like something like flat earth theory. It's not enough for me to just say, oh, that just sounds ridiculous, so I'm not going to look into it. To me, I'm still interested in it. I have that Gemini curiosity where even if it's an idea that doesn't appear useful or functional, even if it's an idea that no one takes seriously, I want to look at that and see, this matters to some people. Obviously, some people believe in this, so why do they believe in it? There must be something compelling about it. And this trait that I have, many of you may have this as well since you're interested in astrology, but it has led me to some pretty, honestly, some dark and isolating experiences, because most people don't do these types of things. So what ends up happening is you learn about things that everyone else either thinks is bullshit or they're just not aware of. And so pretty soon, you have all these beliefs that, it's isolating basically. But so anyway, so that is something that I've done, looking into ideas that are controversial or which appear nonsensical. So that's kind of all I intended to do with astrology. I wanted to just research astrology a bit, I thought it was definitely BS. The same reasoning that, you've heard other people who have little to no knowledge about astrology. They go, well, the premise of it just doesn't make sense. Why would my personality be different, because I was born at a different time? That was my same reasoning. I never related to Virgo. Most of you know I have Virgo sun. I didn't think that Virgo was particularly flattering for a guy to have, since it's always a female emblem or symbol, so I just never was drawn to it. And also for me, for my astrology, Virgo explains part of me, but I don't really like routine, especially at the time of my learning this, when I was about I think I was 18 years old, or I think I was 18 going on 19. Especially as a young person, I really loved variety. I loved trying new things. I got bored very easily. So, I just didn't really relate to Virgo. They always say Virgo's all about routine. But anyway, so sorry to ramble so much, but yeah, I thought I would just look into astrology long enough to just say, yeah, it's definitely BS, and then I could move on. But what ended up happening is that, I don't remember exactly how I started, but I do remember learning of the existence of moon signs. I found out I had moon in Gemini, and that was a huge light bulb, because reading those descriptions, those fit me to a T, way more than Virgo sun. I can now see how, I definitely have a lot of Virgo tendencies as well. I can see that for sure. But at the time, the Gemini moon part really, I wouldn't say it sold me necessarily, but it definitely was intriguing, to say the least. There were a lot of accuracies there, and then there were some patterns that couldn't be denied as well. All of my crushes in high school, my love interests, every single one of them had Gemini sun. And this, I found that out just after I'd learned that I had Gemini moon. So how do you explain that? I didn't know that their birthdays were all within the same month. I had no idea. At the time I was using Facebook. A lot of us as teenagers, we put our birth information on Facebook, so it was very easy to just look at someone's profile, find their birthday, look at the chart, and then there were these undeniable patterns. Also, everyone in my immediate family has an earth sun sign. Things like that really made me ponder and go, okay, that's weird. If that's a coincidence, that's a pretty unlikely coincidence. Maybe there is something deeper here. And then it just escalated. Something that definitely drove my curiosity early on, and even for many years, was the trippy factor. It was all trippy to me because it shouldn't be correct. That's how I viewed it. There's no way this is right, and yet how can you deny these it checks out, but it shouldn't check out. So that in itself really blew my mind, and I think got me hooked on that feeling of my mind being blown, if that makes sense. I really got hooked on all that. So anyway, sorry, not all my answers will be that long, but basically that's what got me interested in astrology. And the whole design of astrology is something that I could really sink my teeth into in a very visceral way, because astrology is complex, but it's based on simple patterns. And I learn by observing patterns. I learn by finding patterns. That's one of my things. That's something that I feel like I'm naturally oriented toward. I'm drawn toward. I feel like I'm, good at finding patterns, and it's interesting for me. So astrology is all about patterns, right? It's a complex system of simple patterns. So that was very intriguing to me. It was natural to learn. And also, once you get into it, the possibilities are endless. You can apply astrology. Of course, you can apply it to psychology, but you can also apply it to history. You can apply it to, other patterns of nature, like, I don't know, maybe even like weather. I don't know. There are many different ways of learning about astrology. There's many different schools of astrology, different mechanisms astrologically. There's just so much you can learn. So I pretty quickly went through, in order, I went through, understanding the 12 signs and then understanding the planets. The houses took me, honestly, a couple years to understand. I could not. I read about houses over and over again. I just could not understand them. I didn't see the need for them. You already have signs. Why learn about houses? So that took me a while, but eventually I did, signs, planets, then houses, and then the aspects, the angles, things like that. So, yeah, and then from there, I did get into these other nooks and crannies of astrology. There's like, draconian astrology. I did try to look at Vedic astrology. It just didn't resonate with me. I'm not saying that it doesn't have value, because it absolutely does. There are many parts of Vedic astrology that are very ancient, more ancient than Western astrology. So they do have a lot of techniques that we don't in Western astrology. And I've heard that you can get a level of detail in Vedic astrology that you just can't in Western astrology. So there's a lot of value in that. It's definitely correct and very useful. It just didn't resonate with me though. I just didn't, it's just not my jam, if that makes sense. Same with Chinese astrology as well. I tried to get into that, learned about that. It just didn't resonate with me. It didn't stick like Western astrology did for whatever reason. So Western astrology, is my thing. I'm not discounting any other form of astrology at all. Sidereal or however you pronounce that. Yeah, there are many different ways of going about it, and that's something I love about it as well. It is unfortunate that it's not a little bit more regulated, because I think that's one of the reasons why astrology is viewed as BS. It's not scientific in the sense that, to be scientific, you have to have some kind of objective, database, usually of experiments that have been done that we can all refer to and go, okay, this person did this experiment, they established that Virgos have these traits or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think that all could be done, but it just hasn't yet. So right now it's kind of like the Wild West. Whoever publishes the best book or makes the most popular video on YouTube basically has their ability to influence how astrology is seen and understood. So I love that about astrology, and I'm not gonna say I hate it, but it is dysfunctional. But at the same time, there is this kind of epic freedom that you have in astrology, since it's really not regulated at all. Like, for example, I haven't been formally educated. I will be very transparent in that. I don't have a degree or anything like that. What other field or industry can you do that in, where you just take it upon yourself to learn about a subject and, use that knowledge to help other people, to do readings like I do. So again, it is dysfunctional in many ways, how unregulated astrology is, but it's also part of what attracts me there, because there's more freedom, there's more possibilities there. Okay, but yeah, I think I answered that. And then the second part of your question is future souls that are incarnated on Earth. It's hard to say. Astrology has, most of you are aware, astrology has had a tumultuous history, ever since, well, I'm not going to get into the whole history of astrology, but it's been a rough several hundred years, right? And in recent history, we've had this kind of volatility of it becomes a new thing. It's kind of trendy for a while. But most people don't get past sun sign astrology. They don't get deep into it. So I don't know. It's hard to say, because astrology is so ancient. It goes back many thousands of years, maybe even before the last glaciation. So, it's not like there's a chart of, when was astrology founded? We can use that chart and then look at astrology itself. Look at the, the transits of astrology itself, the field of astrology. It's not like there's a chart for that we can look to the transits of. It's so ancient, we have no idea. So yeah, honestly, I can have a lot of what's the word? I can definitely speculate, some pretty interesting information in terms of like the future in other areas. But when it comes to the future of astrology itself, I don't think I'm any wiser than anyone else. It's really hard to say. Some have suggested that with this whole, age of Aquarius that is said to be upon us, a common theme there is, well, it'll either be global enslavement or global enlightenment, right? I believe that, I'm on a trajectory that is enlightenment for everyone. it may be very dark before we get there. But what I'm getting at is, if there is this enlightenment that's upon us, this 10,000 year golden age, which may or may not be around the corner, that could, some have said that astrology could be a part of that, and astrology will flourish once again. Honestly, it's anybody's guess. I do think that people will become more aware, but how they do that, I have no idea. I don't know exactly when. I don't know the details of all that. I think astrology could definitely be a part of that. Just like astrology has helped enlighten people like myself and, you who's watching this right now. It could do so for other people as well, but I just have no idea, honestly. I'm sorry. Okay, and let's go through these other questions. So you say it would be fun to see you interpret someone else's chart or someone's chart so we could follow along and learn about astrology that way too. That's a great idea. I actually do that all the time. Those chart readings don't get a lot of views, which makes sense to me because, not everyone is going to be interested in a reading of someone else's chart. However, I do think that that can be a great tool for learning astrology. Whether you want to learn astrology or if you don't really want to learn astrology yourself and you just want someone to kind of tell you what's going on so you don't have to invest all that time into actually learning the subject. Either way, I want to help support and facilitate that. I've always wanted that. So, teaching a man to fish or giving a man to fish, I'll do both. I'll sell you fish and I'll teach you how to fish. Either one, you can do either here. So, yeah, I do post. I do like to post chart readings from time to time. It's kind of free advertisement for me. Most people are willing. I always ask first, of course, and get permission. But most people are willing to have their chart reading posted publicly. So that is something I'll do from time to time to post, public chart readings. But otherwise, I will keep that kind of few and far between, because if I just start posting chart readings over and over, it's just not going to be interesting for the wider audience. Something about that, though, I do want to post maybe a video in the future regarding how I read charts. Really, I always kind of like to explain where I'm, what placement I'm interpreting when I'm doing chart readings. But it would be fun to go a bit beyond that and make more of an instructional video, one that's intended purely to be instructional. So kind of explaining my whole formula, because my chart readings have become much more formulaic over the years. They used to be kind of just all over the place, and they used to be much shorter. They'd be only 20 to 30 minutes long, maybe 40. And I would just kind of read random parts of the chart, how they came to me. Nowadays, this isn't something I necessarily intended, but over the years, doing chart readings over and over and over, doing so many of them, this formula did kind of emerge where I have these set chapters I do. And of course, there's a lot of spontaneity. There's room for me to kind of, jump around to different placements as I see fit. But at the same time, there is this kind of structure there. So I do think it would be fun to explain all that, explain how I read charts. I think that could be very useful for those of you that want to read charts. So, so that could be fun for you as well. Okay, I guess I should be reading your names as I'm doing this. I'm sorry, I'm not used to doing videos like this. Oh my giddy aunt, that's an interesting name. You said, do you place much emphasis on the tables comprising the Mazzaroth / other cultural prophecy structures? To be totally honest, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that is. I don't think I've heard of Mazzaroth. It sounds like Hebrew or something, but yeah, my knowledge on that is zero. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Other cultural prophecy structures, I don't even know. I'm sorry, I have no idea. So swing and a miss. I don't know anything about that. Your other question is, do you mix Astro and Tarot together? I had an aha moment a couple of months ago when I was studying information on the Philosopher's Stone. This sounds super interesting. I don't know anything about these types of things, but I would love to know what you're talking about. Maybe I'll research this. But yeah, Philosopher's Stone, I don't know what that is. But you say one lap of the tarot deck covers 78 cards, returning to the Fool for 79. Not wishing to trigger any chemistry phobes, if you look up 79 on the periodic table of elements, you may have one of those lovely moments which make research worthwhile. XXX. So that's really funny. So okay, so your question basically was, do you mix astro and tarot together? So honestly, not really. I have had some thoughts around that though. I had a friend, Lynn, if you're watching, she always told me, she would have these kind of like psychic flashes, I guess you could say. And she said that she saw me combining astrology and tarot in a very powerful way. And I don't think that's something that I've really tapped into. I think it may be possible in the future. It's just something that hasn't happened quite yet. I do tarot. It's something that I'm interested in. I definitely have stock in that, and I can read tarot to some degree. Not to the same level that I can astrology, I don't think, but I can do chart readings for sure. What's kept me back from becoming more proficient at tarot is that I find it more difficult to practice. So, for example, like when I'm doing a tarot reading, there has to be a legitimate question behind the reading. I can't just say, "Oh, let's just do a reading just for practice." I don't actually care about the answer. It's just for practice. For me, I just don't. It just doesn't work that way for me. The answers become convoluted and they become dark and confusing if there's no real intention like that. So doing free tarot readings, that's kind of the level that I'm at. I would be interested in maybe doing that. If you are interested in that, maybe email me, manic.mercurian@gmail.com. I know this is a bit of an informal way to do that. I didn't intend to like launch that opening. I could make it be something on my website in the future. But yeah, in the beginning I did free birth chart readings, free astrology readings. So that's kind of the level that I'm at for tarot, just because I haven't practiced enough. I need to become more proficient. I would need to, do those free readings or come up with like daily questions myself. But again, the challenge there is coming up with questions I'm genuinely curious about, about learning through tarot. So yeah, honestly, the answer is no, I don't mix astrology and tarot, but I do think it's a potentially really good idea, really interesting idea. Okay, going forward. Oh, and to touch on that as well, I would be interested in doing tarot readings or tarot in videos as well. I've actually done that a little bit in a couple videos, but I would be interested in doing that. It seems like tarot gets a lot more views on YouTube than astrology. And of course, it's not all about the views. It needs to be something that's genuinely interesting and useful. But yeah, I would be interested in doing tarot readings. I don't have the setup for that. I need to get a camera that's like looking down. And again, I would want to become more proficient before doing public readings in that manner. Just because I don't know, I'm still self-conscious about my interpretations of cards and things like that. I'm still a little bit of a newbie with tarot. Okay, and then this person said, just a suggestion, maybe do birth charts on current celebrities or people in the news. I touched on that already. Brilliant question. Why didn't I think of that before? That's an awesome idea. That would not only be, like I already talked about that, I know, but that's one that I'm excited about. That would be interesting, helpful, useful, for learning astrology. It would be fun for me to do, and it could help grow the channel as well. So I think that's a really great idea. I'm kind of curious, I'm not super involved in celebrities. I do know like the sun or moon sign of many different celebrities, but beyond that, I don't know a lot. So I think I'm not sure what would be more interesting or fun, doing a reading for a celebrity where I don't even know anything about them. That way it would really test the astrology, or using my knowledge on someone, in conjunction with the astrology. So I don't know. There's different ways I could go about that, but yeah, that would definitely be very interesting. And then only a couple more. So Wildflowers 477 said, the important events of history and what the planet alignment was. I keep adding things to these questions. I'm sorry. Okay, the important events of history and what the planet alignment was. P.S. Went to your website and thought it was fascinating that trying to dispute astrology opened your eyes. I had my birth chart done 30 years ago, and that opened my eyes. So, yeah, I think a lot of people, have voiced that they find that whole backstory kind of interesting. But yeah, that's how I got into it. I started as a skeptic. You know that story now. I went over that, but glad you found that interesting. And that's pretty cool. Your story is cool as well, having a birth chart done. I tried to do that early on. I used to say skeptics get free readings, but how do you that could be taken advantage of so easily. But yeah, I would love to like blow someone's mind with a birth chart reading. I think that is very rare though. You have to be open. You have to be, even though you may have felt skeptical at the time or you didn't believe in it, you were still open to that idea. Many people are not open. I could do a birth chart reading, or like I was sitting in a bar one time and asked the person next to me, "Are you an Aquarius?" And he said, "Well, yeah, but I don't believe in that." And I'm like, what are the odds of that? So if it was just random, it would be 1 out of 12. I mean, I guess that could, that could be a coincidence, but 1 out of 12, those are pretty difficult odds. And he had zero interest. It did not pique his interest at all. So my point is, if you are skeptical, if you're truly skeptical, you're not even interested in the idea. It's going to take more than a birth chart reading to open your eyes. So it is funny how all that works. I do think that would be pretty I can't imagine the kind of excitement, the mind-blowing experience that it would be to have a chart reading like that. And although there were certain sites that just really said everything about my life getting into astrology that were mind-blowing as well. So yeah, it's very exciting getting into it. And honestly, you can maintain that level of excitement too, because you can get deeper and deeper depending on your level of curiosity, if you're curious like me. But yeah, that's what I love about astrology as well, is that it's really never ending. I have somewhat plateaued, but I'm still learning, and I'm still aware of roads that I haven't even gone down that are even deeper into astrology. Like I already mentioned, sidereal, Vedic astrology, Chinese astrology. There's also the comets, the asteroids and all of that. I just haven't. It's just not my thing. Other people swear by it and have had, I'm not saying it's untrue or not worthwhile or anything like that. It's just not my thing. I'm just drawn to what I'm naturally drawn to, and other people are drawn to different things, and that's what makes life beautiful. That's what makes astrology beautiful as well. There's so many different, subjects and departments within astrology, so you can really find your own thing. You can find your own niche. Find your own way of doing it. Find different subjects that interest you and go very far down those paths. Okay, yeah, moving on. What handle you talk about said, how about the topic of Pluto and its effects the next 20 years going into Aquarius? How Pluto affects the late governmental Capricorn until it transits into Aquarius in January 2024. How will Aquarius handle Pluto? How will late Caps feel when Pluto has finally Okay, let me answer some of these, because these are actually many questions within one. So, yeah, Pluto's effects over the next 20 years going into Aquarius. This is one of those questions. It's definitely worth its own video, or maybe even multiple videos. But yeah, just like you said, Pluto will be in Aquarius from 2024 to 2044. Bear with me. This is going to be a super short answer, I promise. But for the time being, for these couple of years that we're in now, 2023 to 2025, we're experiencing Pluto going back and forth. Pluto enters Aquarius and then it goes back into Capricorn. I think it does so about 3 times before it finally semi-permanently enters Aquarius. So we're in this kind of transitional phase. Pluto is the destroyer, right? Pluto takes, whatever is not true or just and destroys it. And it brings up insecurities, and Pluto says it's kind of like Scorpio energy, right? It's saying, let's bring up the darkness and say, hey, have you looked at this thing that you don't want to look at, that you swept under the rug? Let's bring that out into the surface. So going over the years, the decades, you can see how Pluto affects history. When Pluto was in Let's start with Libra. So when Pluto was in Libra for, I believe that was much of the 70s, that was when you had that first wave of divorces. You know, Pluto is destroying certain parts of marriage, the institution of marriage. Parts of that were not, just or true, and so those were rapidly decaying, right? And I do think it is decay, but with Pluto, it's decay, clearing away the old in order to potentially make way for something new, right? But still, it is, in its essence, destructive, right? So Pluto in Libra was destroying marriage, relationships. That's what Libra has everything to do with. Going into the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, Pluto was in Scorpio, right? So Pluto in Scorpio has to do with sex and intimacy. Then you had the whole AIDS epidemic, so that is destroying certain parts of that. Also just things having to do with sexuality and, homosexuality, things like that were, taboo or, but of a sexual nature. Pluto and Scorpio brought all of that up and said, let's not shy away from these types of things anymore. Let's really bring all this into the surface. And there was that kind of destruction. So, Pluto and Sagittarius has to do with churches, among other things. So in the, late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of corruption was revealed in the church / churches, and many people moved away from the churches. Church attendance went down pretty dramatically over those years. So that was Pluto Sagittarius. Lastly, Pluto and Capricorn. Capricorn has to do with the structure of society, right? The structure, the government, the laws. Over the last 15 years, 2008 to 2023. Pluto's been in Capricorn, so we've really seen, we've always become aware of the corruption. We may be very divided over it. We disagree on where the corruption is coming from. What do we do about the corruption? What's the next move? All of that we can debate on till the cows come home, right? But the shared commonality that I think we should focus on more is at least we see the corruption. We know something is wrong. Before 2008, many of us we weren't aware of corruption on that kind of level. Many of us still believed, the government. We believed the news. Now, whether it be Fox or CNN, I think so. I mean, how many people are still paying attention to the mainstream news? We've all become aware of this corruption of, whatever you want to call it, the establishment or whatever it is. So, that's Pluto and Capricorn. That's, destroying the government, the economy, the structure, and revealing the corruption in those areas. That's another, something I touched on. Pluto not only destroys that area that it's in, but it also shows corruption in that area. So now, applying that to Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius over the next 20 years, Aquarius has to do with groups, right? Group organizations, society, could have to do with the government, but more, the social aspect of that. Also, technology as well as social networks are a great example because they are both technology as well as, groups of people. But also just technology in general, things having to do with technology. So in all of these areas having to do with groups and technology, that's where I would expect over the next 20 years, I would expect a lot of destruction as well as revelations of corruption. I meant to say like revealings of corruption, but revelation just kind of came out. But you could say revelations as well regarding technology, I think we've clearly experienced a boom of technology. A lot of new devices are all over the place. And what typically happens when there is a boom of technology like that is there's a lot of dysfunction. There are a lot of health problems. The same thing happened, many years ago with the onset of electricity, putting electricity in everyone's homes. It was very dangerous. There were so many deaths. The same thing is happening now with, Wi-Fi and smartphones, all this smart technology. There is a lot of dysfunction that we are only, we're not nearly aware of it now, the way we will be after this transit concludes in 2044, right? And there's also, all the other dysfunction surrounding technology, or things that may come into the picture more are, how is all this technology taking our data, learning about us. What's the intention here? We may learn a lot more about this corruption and what's truly going on. What's the intention with a lot of these new technologies? Also, again, going back to that destruction theme, certain technologies may become less reliable. There could be global or widespread blackouts, brownouts of electricity becoming less reliable. That's already something we're seeing in a lot of parts of the world, even in the US, places like California and Texas. But yeah, technology becoming less reliable. Even many people have said the internet could become something that may not always be there. It could be switched off. There could be like solar flares that I've learned about that could completely disrupt and debilitate all of the whole online cloud. All of that could be lost. Things like that could occur. So on the bad side could be disruption, dysfunction, destruction of technology that could be unwanted, but on this could make way for something new. It could reveal some dark truths on technology as well as society and how we've been manipulated socially. Okay, and then how Pluto affects the late governmental Capricorn. So yeah, I mean, right now when we're in these few years where Pluto is like gradually entering Aquarius and leaving Capricorn, we are kind of getting hints at what Pluto and Aquarius is going to be about. And then we're also wrapping up the themes of Pluto and Capricorn, right? So like I said, 15 years Pluto's been in Capricorn. It's revealed a lot of the corruption with government. So a lot of that is just kind of coming to a head. That's what tends to happen at the end of a transit. It becomes intensified and we often get flashbacks. So different things we may have experienced both individually as a collective regarding learning about the corruption of the government or the economy, things like that we may get flashbacks on at this time with Pluto transiting the last 3 degrees of Capricorn. How will Aquarius handle Pluto? I think I kind of answered that. How will late Caps feel when Pluto has finally left after 16 years? I think you'll feel great. Pluto crossing over your sun sign or any other major, if you have ascendant or moon or maybe something else at the, somewhere in Capricorn. The last 15 to 16 years may have been very difficult, very dark for you because like I said, Pluto's a malefic energy. It is, by its nature, it is difficult. It can definitely be good. We can make use of it. It can be enlightening. It can clear away the whatever, again, whatever is not working, whatever is dark or, untrue. Pluto can clear that away. So there are many good parts of Pluto. It's definitely not evil or anything like that. Even in, Greek mythology, Pluto, Hades was not seen as evil. Definitely dark for sure, but true, just, right? So there may have been a lot of good things that have come out over these transits for you, but this is still an objectively difficult energy. I think, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's definitely true here. So in other words, having Pluto leave your sign, if your sign is Capricorn, if you've got major placements there, you will really see how strong you've become. I think Capricorns are, always tested. They've already got an objectively challenging energy. Capricorn is already challenging, but having Pluto cross your sign as well, it, like I said, it brings about a lot of dark themes. It's very destructive in its nature. So having that leave your sign is, it just takes that pressure off. And then Aquarius will deal with all that pressure for the next 20 years. It is a really long transit. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a bit rambly, but I think I answered your question. You may feel kind of a sigh of relief. You'll feel that pressure kind of lift from you. And then you'll see how strong you've become, because on the one hand, this is something I'm not experiencing, and I can't imagine how difficult it is. On the one hand, I definitely don't envy anyone that experiences that, because it can be so destructive and so difficult, so dark. However, on the other hand, I could envy the result of it, because you become so strong, you're invincible after a transit like that, because you've really gone through hell and back, right? So yeah, could be very exciting, Pluto leaving your sign. And last comment slash question from E Rose Toes is thoughts on numerology. So yeah, I like numerology. Someone actually just recently asked me that in person as well. Yeah, it's something I wouldn't say I use nearly to the degree of astrology, but I definitely see the accuracy and the usefulness of numerology. I don't get super into, I'm a life path this, and there's different words for it. I didn't get super into that, and I'm not saying it's not of value, it's just not for me. I know my numbers are 2, 7, 9, and 11. I don't know what the numbers are for manic.mercurian. I've never thought about that. Maybe one of you could tell me, or I'll figure it out. But yeah, those are my numbers. I do relate heavily to those numbers. It definitely checks out to me. A lot of those are kind of like spiritual in nature or having to do with higher learnings, and that's what my astrology is all about too. That's what my astrology shows as well. So plus, like, I always get the weirdo answer, like with Myers-Briggs. Originally I got INFJ, which is, they say it's the rarest one. With my birthday, September 7th, it said, oh, you're an enigma is the way they put it. So same thing with numerology. I got 11, and they say, oh, that's a special one. You're the weird one. So I always get that, and I'm not bragging. It's rough. I don't always want that. Sometimes I just want to fit in, you know what I mean? But I don't think that's what I'm meant to do. So, but yeah, numerology is definitely interesting. I saw a video, this was years ago, so I don't remember her name, but she talks about the numerology of addresses for houses or apartments, things like that. And that I found really intriguing. And I used to be a mail carrier, delivering mail. So that was something that, I could apply to many different buildings I was familiar with and things like that. And I definitely found that to really check out. So that's something that I do, if I'm moving into a new place. I want to know what's the address so I can learn the astrology or the numerology of it. My address right now, I'm not going to say the number, but it's a 1 numerology, right? Let me think about that. Yeah. So that's something that's fun. I tend to be more oriented or more drawn to outgoing energies, fire and air in astrology, or odd numbers in numerology. So, excuse me. So yeah, 1, that's something, I just think about stuff like that. So, yeah, honestly, I don't know exactly your question. I don't get much deeper than that though. I'm just kind of a shallow numerology user. Okay, and then this is almost an hour long, but I did write some questions as well, and these are questions I've legitimately gotten a lot. So let's just briefly go through these. One question I've gotten a lot is, are these psychic readings? People who have gotten readings have asked me that. Was that psychic? Because that couldn't have just been astrology. I swear, people have told me, oh, that was psychic for sure, even if you don't believe it. And also just from people that aren't into astrology. I mean, that's kind of a different context, but I think for people who have no reference, they say if it comes up that I do readings, they go, oh, so they're psychic readings? And I'm like, well, not exactly. But yeah, are they psychic readings though? Honestly, that's kind of confusing. It depends on your definition of psychic. Many of us have this idea of psychic abilities as being, oh, I'm having a vision and I have these we only see the extreme of it, because many of us we're not around these types of things. That was my understanding growing up, that it's only certain people are psychic and they've got abilities that I just don't have. So if you have that kind of understanding, then no, they're not psychic readings at all. I'm I'm just looking at patterns that I've learned about astrologically. I'm reading the chart. That's all I'm doing in a reading, right? So it's not psychic in that capacity. But on the other hand, you can argue that everyone is psychic, and I do think psychic abilities can be one way of kind of accessing them is through patterns and interpretations. So for example, like in a chart, the area that I find to be the most clearly psychic one of the areas is when I start connecting the dots. So when I start seeing a pattern come up in multiple parts of the chart and connecting the dots and saying, oh, okay, this is part of a larger theme. You don't just have Sun in Leo and Moon in Sagittarius, like now these different points are starting to paint this, bigger picture, and it's starting to really tell me a story. That I feel like, I guess you could argue it's still logical analysis, but at the same time, I do think that there's something intuitive about that. Connecting the dots, the distance between the dots, if you want to use that analogy. I do think that is kind of psychic in a sense, right? So, so yeah, it just depends on your understanding. Some people have even asked me, do you have to be psychic to know astrology? And again, everyone's psychic on some level, so the answer is, no, you don't have to be psychic. But on the other hand, everyone's psychic, so it just depends on your definition of psychic. But yeah, it's mostly done through logical analysis, but you could argue that there is some kind of psychic energy there as well. I do find that when I'm doing videos and talking, it does take a lot of energy from me. It's energizing as well, but doing any kind of video, even like this one, I'm just talking for an hour straight. How often do you do that? And I'm not talking about, oh, me and my friend got carried away and talked for hours, because even there, you're only talking about half the time, right? Because the other person is presumably talking the other half of the time. Doing a video like this, it's just me. Oftentimes I'm talking very quickly. The same goes for birth chart readings. Many of them go for an hour or more, and it's just me talking the entire time. So there is a lot of energy in that, and sometimes, to be totally honest, sometimes I do find myself I almost feel like I'm being fed the answers. Different words will kind of pop up that I may not be familiar with, and I go, is there something more there? And then that brings up this whole idea of geniuses. It's the same root word as genie. Ancient times, they were said to be spirits like hovering around you that were kind of helping your abilities, things like that. So I do find that could be accurate, and that there may be something feeding information into or through me, if that makes sense. I do kind of wonder about that from time to time, for sure. How did you get into astrology? We already talked about that. What next for I think actually I covered the rest of my questions already. I just wrote, what's next for the channel, and restate the channel's intentions, which I already did. So, okay. So yeah, I think that concludes this video. It was kind of all over the place. Thanks for, if you're still here, I don't know why you're here, but that's cool, I guess. You must have a really great attention span. But yeah, thanks for kind of holding on to my rants and rambles. Hopefully this was interesting for you. But yeah, and as always, if you have any suggestions, feel free to comment them below. I've gotten a lot of good suggestions. I've gotten a lot of kind of terrible suggestions as well, but I'm open to all of it. That's what this is all about, freedom of speech and the internet and all that. But yeah, any suggestions for future videos or any questions you have for me, that's what comments are for. Feel free to leave those for me. Or I always say, if you want to talk to me, my email is very public, manic.mercurian@gmail.com. You don't necessarily have to email me just for a reading. Could be for anything, any reason why you want to connect with me. Okay, but thanks for watching. Yeah, and I do just have a lot of gratitude. And it's not even in the sense of, a lot of people say, oh, thanks for, 3,000 subs or whatever it is. I mean, that's pretty cool too. But honestly, what I'm really grateful for is just to be able to connect with everyone, because, I've said this before that, it may seem very one way, and it's just, in this case, it's just me talking to you and you can't talk back. But that's not necessarily true. Not only are there comments and emails and, different ways to connect like that, but also, even if you never comment, even if you never reach out to me, I do think we are connected energetically, and you're aware of my presence. I may not be logically aware of your presence, but I do think we connect to each other, and through that connection, we can share ideas. We might not be cognitively aware of those connections, but I do think they're there, and I think there's a back and forth there. So that's what I'm truly grateful for, you know, and I see that in a lot of your comments and a lot of the connections. But again, I think the level of connection goes beyond what we can consciously comprehend. I think there's something deep there and very fun, and I learn from you guys as much as you learn from me. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's true though. That's something that I've always desired, is, you know, to continue to learn, and that's more so the direction I'm going now compared to, you know, years ago. I wasn't doing anything like this at all. I wasn't doing readings. I was just focused on researching the astrology and learning that way. I'm still focused on that as well, but now much of my learning also comes from, you know, doing all these different readings and having a database in my mind of, okay, I've done all these different readings. Those of you that share how your readings were, you know, how they resonate with you, you know, I do get overwhelmingly positive feedback. You know, I'm not always right about everything, but you know, they've been rated like over 90%. But when I get that kind of feedback, and, you know, when you illustrate how it's accurate for you, you know, you definitely don't have to do that if you get a reading. But I am grateful for those of you that have done that, because it really helps me learn even more. You know, you might be amazed that I can see so much from a chart reading, but really, you know, it's almost like when I do a chart reading for some kind of, you know, random person I don't know, it's sort of like I've painted a picture, but it's like in black and white or something like that. I don't really have the details. I just have these probabilities. I've got these themes that I can see for your life. But when you fill in the blanks and you know, you talk about your lives, you know, you can see it in a way that I can't, obviously, just like I can maybe see it in a way that you can't, maybe astrologically, if you don't have that knowledge. So yeah, after reading, you know, those of you that do share that personal information, that's mind-blowing to me, because it really, you know, paints that picture. It fills in the color and the detail into that story. Okay, so anyway, I am just grateful for this whole experience. It's been very interesting. I never really thought I would do something like this. However, this has been a dream of mine for several years to make videos and things like that. So yeah, a lot of fun. I'm going to stop rambling, but thanks for watching, and yeah, have a great day.